Welcome, 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 and welcome again. I'm Johnny Olive, and this is Harperland Exposed. Tonight we're going to talk about a relatively new Canadian law with an ironic name. I mean that it has a name not to describe what it is, but rather to trick you into thinking it is something different. It's not that they picked a name that was completely different. It wasn't like they took a law legalising the use of landmines in toy shops and called it the Free Candy for Children Law. Rather, it is the inclusion of a word, usually an adverb or adjective, that is intended to evoke enough emotion to satisfy you just enough that you don't feel the need to look into the details of the law. That's a good name. I feel good about that name. I won't dig any deeper because that name makes me feel so good. But when you look a little closer, you see the adjective or adverb for what it really is. A lie. This can be clearly illustrated with country names. For example, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. Part of that name is true. It is Korea. North Korea at least, but that's about it. Then he goes way too far to try and convince you that it isn't being run by a completely despotic dictator who either turns a blind eye to or actively engages in enforced starvation, torture, murder, enslavement, imprisonment, forced abortion, sexual violence, rape and enslavement. Because Republic and People's Democratic State are redundant. They mean the same thing. They're saying it twice. A good rule of thumb is, if they have to put it in the name, then it probably isn't. You can try this on the names of other countries too. Look at the United States of America. Or the United Kingdom. United. All this leads to tonight's main topic, Canada's 2014 Fair Elections Act. So how fair is the Fair Elections Act? Actually, it's very fair. Incredibly fair, ridiculously fair. If you're rich or you're a corporation or your party is supported by rich people and corporations and you're not keen on regular taxpaying Canadians. But if, on the other hand, you're one of those aforementioned taxpayers, it's not very fair at all. At first glance, some of the measures in the bill seem quite reasonable. One of the arguments for this law was that the existing laws were archaic and didn't take into account the rising costs of advertising and other expenses. But when you look a little closer and examine the provisions in the law and take them to their logical conclusions, it becomes clear that it is as far from fair as you can get. It's even more unfair than putting a child in a round room and telling her to sit in the corner or you'll kill her pet kitten. Can't find a corner, Susie? Well, you obviously don't love whiskers very much, do you? The most obvious of these sounds reasonable but is really a trick to screw everyone but the rich and powerful is the ending of the per-vote subsidy. Each party used to get a certain amount of public money for each person that voted for them in the previous election. It seems obvious that abolishing that would hurt the ruling party the most. After all, they had gotten the most votes. Plus, it should take the burden off the taxpayer, right? Prior to the 2014 law, any political party that garnered at least 2% of the vote would have received in the region of $2 per vote. That's $2 Canadian, which is about 14 cents American. The Canadian dollar hasn't been this strong in decades. Glorious times indeed. Jean-Pierre Kingsley, former chief electoral officer, said, "Just ask the Green Party how it affected them. It really cut into their financial base. The Liberals lost millions. The NDP lost millions. True, the Conservative Party got nothing. The poor bastards. The only help they were left with was rich people and corporations to give them money." On a side note, this will make it almost impossible for new grassroots parties to get off the ground. Stephen Harper's own Reform Party took full advantage of that law. But when Stephen Harper got in power, it was time to change that law, to stop other grassroots parties from sneaking in to change things. Brilliant! But at least taxpayers aren't on the hook for political parties anymore. Thanks, Stephen. Much appreciated. So, who is on the hook for it? Well, anyone who wants their party to win can donate according to that which they feel their party is worth or that which they can afford. So the taxpayer is still on the hook for something. But at least your money won't go to the other side, so you can give as much as you can afford. And rich people and corporations can do likewise. Could anything be fairer? Not for the rich! Now, having said that, all your political donations are tax deductible. You can claim up to 75% of your donation. How fantastic is that? Think about how much you'll get back from your $5 donation. You can buy yourself 1/15th of a candy bar at your local dollar store, or 1/20,000th of a used Pontiac Sunfire. I've been living in Winnipeg for some time, and like all well-adjusted Winnipeggers, I like a deal, but I don't feel like this is a very good deal at all. But if I was rich, then I could give more money to the political party of my choice. Then I would really feel the benefits. That settles it! I need to get rich! I don't know why poor people have never thought of this before! Joan Bryden of the Canadian Press said, "The Canadian Taxpayers Federation estimates those tax credits are worth somewhere between $16 million and $36 million per year in foregone revenue. So rather than save taxpayers' money, here's a bill for $36 million. And still, don't forget the extra money you are already giving out to your political party of choice. You still have to pay that, as well as pay a bonus to the rich and corporations through taxes. Thank you very much, Stephen. Thank you so bloody much. People who back politicians expect something in return. If you donate something to your MP, you'd expect him to represent your interests in some way. The more you give, the more you'd expect your interests to be represented. The thousands of dollars some rich corporation, or for that matter powerful union, will get the attention of your MP far more than your 1 toonie and 3 loonies. But wait, it's illegal for unions and corporations to donate to political parties, isn't it? Yes, but only once the election writ has been issued. That is to say, once the election is called. Prior to the election being called, there are no limits. Jean-Pierre Kingsley said, "There is no limit on how much third-party groups can raise and spend prior to an election being called. Nor are they required to disclose their donors or how much they have raised. That means pre-writ financial contributions can come from anyone, anywhere, including corporations and unions, which are banned from contributing to political parties, and people who live outside of Canada. Anonymity could never lead to anything bad. Everyone knows that accountability is completely overrated. They won't know it's us. We can break the old lady's window and set fire to her house." One of the new ways that corporate money can now get into Canadian politics is something that has a clear US stench to it. About 6 months before the 2015 election, some of Harper's friends put together a group to raise money for Harper's re-election. They called it Harper Pack. Really? They were too stupid to not give it a name in the style of those very same corrupting US groups. But defenders of this pack say emphatically that it is nothing like the big money US PAC phenomenon. Except they are only using it in the exact same way to do the exact same thing, anonymously pour money into Canadian politics. However, with all this money pouring into Canadian politics, we should feel comfortable knowing we have a Chief Electoral Officer watching out for us. Except that, thanks to Mr. Harper's fair election law, the power of the Chief Electoral Officer has been all but extinguished. In an article on cbc.ca, Laura Payton writes, Chief Electoral Officer Mark Mayran told the Senate committee last week that he's concerned the Chief Electoral Officer would no longer be able to alert the public to problems during an election, or even to work with programs that teach students about civic affairs and how elections work. Election fraud investigation has always been led by the Commissioner of Canada Elections. He used to report directly to the Chief Electoral Officer. But under the Fair Elections Act, he reports to the Director of Public Prosecution. There is a growing concern whether the Commissioner and the Chief Electoral Officer will be allowed to share information with each other. If not, this would greatly impair investigations into election fraud. And the difficulty of investigating gets even harder, because when someone is being investigated by the Commissioner of Canada Elections, he has to tell the suspects they are being investigated. Ring ring. Hello? What? I'm being investigated? Well, thank you for letting me know. Tracy, take all the files marked election fraud and shred them now. Shred them like you've never shredded anything before. This will make it virtually impossible to investigate any election fraud, let alone get a conviction. Can you imagine forcing the police to work this way? Why pass such a series of laws unless you, the person that pushed hard for them, are either committing these crimes or plan to do so in the future? There is something disgustingly slimy about this whole bill. Now, if that wasn't bad enough, the Chief Electoral Officer is also forbidden to promote the election in any way. He is in fact limited only to instructing people how to vote. Stephen Harper stated that it is only political parties who should get the message out to vote. But most people are not on a political party's mailing list. If someone is not affiliated with a political party, there's a good chance they could miss out on voting entirely. But Harper, like all neoconservatives, know that when there is a low voter turnout, the right-wing conservative parties always do better. It's as true here in Canada as it is in the United States. When lots of people turn out, they tend to vote in their best interests. We tried very hard to come up with a joke for this bit, but we couldn't, because this just isn't funny! There are other provisions in this fair law that make voter suppression easier. but that will take a full show all by itself. So there you have it, the Fair Elections Act, or to give it its real name, the Pour Money into Politics and Turn Canada into an Oligarchy, just like the USA Act. In the United States, money in politics has led to Donald Trump, a millionaire real estate developer, becoming the presumptive Republican nominee for president. A man who has never been elected to any public office ever could be their next president. To be fair, there would need to be many more changes to laws and political processes for that to happen here in Canada, but the Fair Elections Act is a very big leap in that direction. If we fail to reverse these flagrant attempts to corrupt our political system, this could be our next Prime Minister. Or this. Or this. Or this. Oh, actually, Bill Shatner as PM would be freaking cool. Who wouldn't vote for Captain Kirk? So join me in voicing your opinion on this issue. Write to your MP about getting money out of Canadian politics. Not sure how to go about that? Well, then visit our friends at Democracy Watch. If they weren't our friends before, we're hoping they will be after this video is released. Follow the first link in the description, fill out their form, and let your MP know all about it. Voice your opinion on Facebook. Tweet about it using these hashtags: GetMoneyOutCDN and CanPolly. Sources for tonight's show are in the description. There's lots and lots, really. It took weeks for us to prepare this show. Don't forget to click the subscribe button or click this link in the video. That's it for this week. See you next time on Harperland Exposed. Good night.